Hello, welcome back to everyone that's tuning to our channel, American Ultra Stock. Braden and I, you see the signs right behind Braden. It's a stock watch, but this time around it's a little bit different. We missed stock watch last week, but that's because we were trying to find exactly the halfway point of the season. It's the stock watch of the season so far, so we'll be grouping up the players who we thought have raised their stock the most this season or have dropped, unfortunately. Straight to the point, Braden, who's the first player that you think has raised his stock so far at this halfway point?
So the first player, it has to be, he's probably had the best season of any American so far, Christian Pulisic. What a comeback for him. Great turnaround. He was, obviously, we all know the situation he had at Chelsea, out of the team, battling with injuries, but he stayed relatively healthy this year, just one small injury issue that coincided with the international break anyway, so he didn't really miss too much time from Milan at all, and already broke the American record in Serie A for most goals in a season today as we record this, which isn't saying much because we haven't had many Americans in Serie A besides like Michael Bradley, who doesn't score goals. But it's still impressive that he broke it in half a season. And yeah, I mean, it's the perfect turnaround. He's playing for a Champions League team, even though they got knocked out to the Europa League. He's still having a great season with 6 goals, bunch of goal contributions, and I think he's been Milan's best player, even in a down year for them. So he has to be his first stock up.
And I think that you never know. It's halfway through the season. They might climb back up and really fight for the title. I think that they should secure a UCL spot regardless, and that's a lot thanks to him. And like you said, if you look at where he was during the summer before this transfer was materialized, the way that he's revived his career, it's really remarkable, really. Now, my next pick, my first pick is Ricardo Pepi. I know that he's not a starter for national team or club, but I have to say he has raised his stock remarkably because every time that he gets an opportunity, he scores. He's so prolific, and just the mental fortitude. Really, you see the way that he deals with the pressure. He said recently in an interview that he doesn't really feel the pressure, and I honestly believe him because every time that he gets minutes, it never seems like he's trying to do too much. It never seems like he's disjointed for not really being played as the starter. He always delivers, does so well, very eager to show service, and I think that Pepe has definitely raised the stock and put himself in a position where he's not undeniably the backup for the national team. I think that now a lot of people would be more open to the idea of Pepe starting ahead of Balogun for the national team, and that he is setting the foundation for the future of his career at PSV. He's definitely the future. The young's not going to get any younger, and he's been so good for them and has that remarkable moment. I think it's the best moment of his career so far in the Champions League. You get your team through in a marvelous comeback. He has to get a stock up, in my opinion. Who's the first player that you think hasn't really done himself too much justice and brought his stock down so far, Brayden?
So my first stock down so far, halfway through the season, is going to be Cameron Carter-Vickers. Now, the first part of this isn't his fault. He got injured. The injuries are unavoidable. It happens to everyone, especially American players, it seems. But he got injured, and then the first game back against Lazio in the Champions League, he comes off the bench and he gifts away the game-winning goal to Lazio. Celtic crash out of the Champions League in last place. They probably would have done that regardless, let's be fair. They're not a very good team, especially compared to Champions League quality. But it's still not a good look for him, not the way he would have wanted to come back from injury. And as a result, he hasn't capitalized as where he was probably the best center back in the Scottish League last season, for whatever that's worth. He's now not even a fully locked-in starter for Celtic. They had the Old Firm derby today as we record this against Rangers, and he didn't play at all. I don't know what the reasoning behind that is, but clearly he hasn't cemented himself in the starting lineup. He's now more of a rotational player, so his stock's down from Celtic, especially since a lot of people in the summer said he should make a Premier League move. I think I've said it before. Him when he was in the Premier League is one of the worst center backs I've ever seen. I don't want him to go back there. I don't think it's his level. I think it's well above how good he is, and honestly, he just needs to work on cementing his spot back at Celtic.
Yeah, I think that signing from Johnson from Liverpool on loan was really detrimental to his season because now he, like you said, he's not really a locked in starter, and the title of best center back in Scotland really goes so far as a player who never played a Prem game for Liverpool gets thrown in there, and he's the best center back in Scotland. What's that worth, really? So I completely agree, especially since we have a shortage at that position. If he was having a good season or had some good Champions League performances to back up that claim that he could be the starter for the national team. He could be undeniable if he was having a good season so far, even playing in the Scottish Premier League if he had capitalized on the chances in the UCL. So the first player that I'm picking as a stock down, it's maybe a little bit harsh. He just renewed his contract. He's a center back as well. Tim Ring. I love the guy. One of the most likable players. I think definitely has a future in the staff as well. I hope so. Just the trajectory that his career took, becoming a professional at 22 years old and ending up and he will retire as a Premier League player, Premier League level player. So it's really nice to see. But I think that in terms of national team, not only because of the age, I feel like his performances haven't been too good as well. We don't like to see it or pinpoint that because he's such a nice and likable guy. But I truly think that Ream has fallen off a little bit, especially compared to last year. Maybe it's the round of games. He never really gave himself a chance to fully recover from the arm and kept on playing as well. I don't know if that has any say on it, but he has been playing a lot of soccer. Probably wants to get every last drop that he can at the Prem level. But his performances have fallen off, I have to say. And now I can't imagine. It was a stretch of imagination, but some people would say that maybe he would be around for 26, but I can't imagine that at all after this season. So I have to pick him. It's a little bit of a harsh one, but for national team purposes, I feel like it's definitely a stock down. On a brighter note, who's the one that gets a stock up now, Braden?
It's very frustrating that all of our center backs seem to be throwing away the opportunity because, like you said, our center back position is probably the weakest. There's no depth, and yet the spots are open for anybody, but no one seems to be grasping them. But onto a more positive note, my next stock up for halfway through the season is going to be Weston McKennie, who was probably the biggest stock down from the end of last season after the horrible loan move at Leeds, where he moved to be with his friends Adams and Aronson and with Marsh, and then Marsh got sacked immediately, and they were all kind of screwed. And Leeds went down. We all know the rest, but he's come back very, very motivated at Juventus. It looked like he was going to be sold in the summer. He wasn't part of Allegri's plans, but in preseason he fought back, earned his spot on at wing back or in the center mid. It doesn't really matter. He's good wherever he plays for Juve, and I honestly think he's been their best player this season. The fans love him as well. He's always the fan favorite, always getting pictures with the fans, even in away games as well. Even away fans love him. And honestly, I think that part of his personality is a little underrated because it definitely raises locker room morale. You saw last season, Juve struggled a lot towards the end of the year when he was gone. I'm not saying it was completely because he was gone, but now with him back, they're in the title race. Morale seems to be very high around the club, and he's having this probably season of his life.
Yeah, and he beat the Fatso McKinney allegations too. We can't say that. He really did beat them, and it's nice to see that. I don't think anybody at Juve, any Juve fan, would have thought they would be fighting for the title, and now it turns out like they will, and I think they will win it. I really truly feel like they will win it, and McKinney will be a big part of that. I have to talk about another American midfielder in playing in Italy. I talk about him a lot. But Tanner Tessman, I have to pick him. What a season. What a year, really. I'm just going to recap very briefly. Venezia are at the brink of relegation, really, in December last year. And Giagialo, the starting defensive midfielder, gets injured. Tessman gets thrown around there. And honestly, at that time, I didn't really rate Tessman. I thought he was just an average Serie B level player. Starts playing week in, week out. Ends the season being the midfielder that's 21 years old or younger with more goal contributions, which was remarkable. Starts the season as the captain for some games. He is the vice captain at the club, so he always ends the match with the captain's armband. Gets his own song, 4 goals, 4 assists. Great appearance in the Coppa Italia as well against Serie A level opposition, and things are looking up for him. I have to say, what a stock up. I would have never imagined at this point last year that I'll be saying this. Tessman, in my opinion, he has such a bright future. I have for the mentality as well and the passion, and a guy from Alabama to learn Italian and be playing so well there. It's nice to see, and I'm happy he didn't get the move. And talking about a move, I just want to touch on what you said about McKinney. Maybe that move to Leeds was a blessing in disguise because it made him realize that he needs to step up. And I felt like he was too comfortable in his comfort zone really at Juventus, and he didn't know the magnitude of how bad things can go if you just blink and start slacking off. But yeah, those are my picks. Now the next one for a stock down, Braden.
My next stock down is going to be another player who I've had in the stock down a lot, and it's going to be Taylor Booth. And again, same story with CCV. It's basically a carbon copy, actually. He gets injured. It's not his fault. It's very unlucky. He's out for a lot of the season. He finally comes back. He gets his starting spot back immediately, which shows just how good he was for Utrecht last year. They're in a relegation battle. Maybe it was because he was out to injury, who knows? But he just doesn't have the same spark as he did last season. I don't know if he's still recovering from injury or what's going on there. Maybe the team around him is worse. But regardless of the situation, he just hasn't looked like the same player, and he eventually got benched. Some games he's coming off the bench playing 30 minutes. Some games he's not even playing at all. And it's a little concerning that occasionally in some match weeks, his little brother Zach is even getting more minutes than him, who hasn't ever played professionally in his career. This is his first season, and he's playing for a much worse team. So it's just not been an ideal start to the year for Taylor. I do still have hope that he can turn it around because he was one of Utrecht's best players last season and a very good season for them. They're having a down year this year, but like we saw with Venezia last year and Tessman, the second half of the season can make a huge difference. So I do still have hope, but for the first half of the year, it has to be a stock down for Taylor Booth.
Absolutely has to. I completely agree. It's crazy, the links with Man United, you see how much that has fallen off, because even though that was never true, you can never even imagine someone making that up right now. Now, the other player that I have to pick, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to pick Brandon Harrison. Sorry, Brandon, you're the biggest fan of Brandinho, but it has to be a stock down. The part when you said that at Leeds, him, McKinney, and Adams and Marsh, and they all kind of got screwed up. That's an understatement with how things have gone for some of them. Apart from West and McKinney, I can't really say any of those other guys have gotten any better, really. And the career decision was good. I feel like it was a good move on paper to Union Berlin, but things just haven't panned out as they should have, really. For him, I feel like it really lacks on looking at him individually, the end product, just the end product, the finishing. If he could get his finishing better, he would go from a C level player, let's say, to an A. He could really be a good player at a top 5 league, unarguably, because I think that he has a talent. A lot of his physicality in terms of stamina and endurance gets people to overlook how good he is technically. But the end product has to improve, and the club is just a mess. It's not an ideal situation at all. It seems like it's a transitional season for them. Maybe they try to take a step too farther than they could have, and they really don't have the depth to do well in the extra competitions they're playing, and at the domestic level as well. It will be very underwhelming. I don't think they will be fighting at the top half of the table at all. And unfortunately for Brandon, the revival that he needed isn't happening, so it has to be a stock down for me. On a brighter note, who's your next pick, Brandon?
So my last stock up is going to be Johnny Cardoso. A bit unexpected unless you watch Tech, who has been singing his praises for a long time now. And honestly, I was doubting him because at the start of the season, he was looking like one of the worst players in the Brasileirão, because I don't know what was going on with him. I don't know if it was the pressure. Brazilian fans can be very, very harsh a lot of the times, and perhaps unfair, but he was having a very poor season, calling for him to get benched, leave the club. But the new manager came in and he turned around completely. He's been a new player. I think Johnny Zidane, Zinedine Zidane is his new nickname at Internacional, and he's been there since he was a little kid, and we saw the emotion in his last game for Internacional. Obviously, he's going to Real Betis in January, and he should be available for the next match, actually. But the leaving the club and his last game with the captain's armband was just such a touching moment. It shows how much he meant to the club and how much the club meant to him. And it's just a Cinderella story for him, turning his season around, becoming one of the best midfielders in the team, making a deep run to the Libertadores semifinals. It should have been the finals. Honestly, I think they should have won the competition, but they completely bottled it in the semifinals. Very disappointing to see on that aspect, but he turned his season around, kind of similar to what Booth and CCV could have done, but failed to capitalize on. So I think he's well deserving of this stock up, and hopefully he gets implemented into Betis as quickly as possible and just continues to fly in La Liga.
Yeah, I have to agree. I mean, I've been, for people that have watched this channel for a while, I've been one of his biggest critics at the start of the season at the Gauchon, which is a very low-level competition, the state championship from where Inter is from. I thought he was atrocious, really bad. Did really bad at the Grenal and the derby against Grêmio, but turned the season around completely. Like you said, the turning point was Coudet getting hired and completely changed even his role in the game as well, where he plays. and just seemed to give him so much confidence. And he did. You're right. He earned that move really towards the end of the season. Maybe it was a bit too soon. I would have liked to see him stay there one more year personally, but I completely get it. He got an offer from a big team in Europe. You got to say he has to leave really at that point. So I really wish him the very best of luck. It could be a debut against Luca De La Torre, so that would be nice to see as well. I like that Johnny won't be the type of Luca De La Torre player that just passes sideways. So we'll see that one. But the last player that I'm going to pick for a stock up has to be Jedi. I'm going to say he's such a consistent player that lots of times people won't give him the praises that, oh wow, he shined this week. It's just what it's expected from him. But he has to say he has up to level this year. There was a bit of a bad moment earlier this season where he wasn't playing too well, and he was joking around about it as well. You see that he has the self-criticism that a lot of our players could have in order to improve their careers. I think it would be a warm welcome if they had the same level of self-criticism that he has, and he completely turned it around. He really did up a level. Going to be a father now as well, so it's nice to see maybe that's an extra motivation there. But he has been more prolific going forward, and I feel like his touch, I've said it before, I feel like his touch has gotten a lot better this year. And what a solid guy. I think that the links to Liverpool, maybe it's a bit of a stretch, but hey, he got linked to Liverpool. That already shows something. It's not out of this world really there without Robinson or Tsimikas. Maybe he could step up there. Why not give it a go? So I'm happy for Jedi. I have to pick him as my last stock up. Now, who's your next pick?
I do have to say, Tolkien got linked to Chelsea and Booth got linked to United. So take these rumors with a grain of salt. But honestly, I don't think a 6-month loan would be the worst thing in the world for Jedi to go to Liverpool. But to end things off on a poor note, and it has to be Gio Reyna, who's had one of the most detrimental seasons of his career, which is saying a lot because every season seems to be detrimental to his career. Whether it's attitude problems in the World Cup, whether it's never-ending injuries with Dortmund, it's just not been the rise to the talent that he has that we would have hoped by now. Already 21 years old, he should realistically be, given the talent that he showed a couple of years ago, he should be out of Manchester City or Real Madrid by now. But it just hasn't worked out like that. And this season, he's rarely featured at all for Dortmund, even though they're in every competition imaginable, Champions League, topping the group of death, which just props to them and honestly shows that maybe Edin Terzic isn't the problem, because a lot of USMNT fans are blaming him for the lack of use for Reyna. I do think he's maybe misusing him a little bit, but clearly he's shown that he can get it done when it counts, even though they're not doing the best in the Bundesliga. The Champions League is the most important, and they topped one of the toughest groups we've seen in years. So props to Dortmund, and no props to Reyna, because he hasn't been getting any minutes at all. I don't think he's had a single goal contribution all year. Maybe he's had one or two. But when you play 5 minutes every couple of games, it's kind of hard to get a goal contribution. And last season, he was doing very well with the limited minutes, kind of like Pepe is this year. But it's been a huge decrease this year. And honestly, I think he just needs a loan move, get his confidence back, and maybe come into next season with a new energy. Kind of like McKennie did, but hopefully his loan goes a lot better than McKennie's loan to Leeds did. Or honestly, maybe it'll be a wake-up call again for him, because he definitely needs something like that to fix his attitude, get his maturity up, and really make him focus on winning his spot back.
Yeah, you mentioned the attitude. I really think that there's something else going behind the scenes, really. You see that his discussion that he had, he was very adamant on his discussion with Hummels and Mats Hummels. He's a legend at this point at Dortmund, and the way that he was opening up the arms and yelling at him. And I think that if we look at the trajectory of his career and what we expected, you're right. It should be a Man City or Real Madrid, or at least a solidified starter at Dortmund at this point. But there is a video coming out comparing him to Malik Tillman. I would argue that Tillman's at a better spot in his career. They're the same age than Gio is at the moment. So yes, you're right. It's a huge stock down, unfortunately. And there's always these off the field things going on, all changing the agents. I don't know how relevant that is. Maybe it is a good move. I don't know. But I would argue that what you said is completely spot on. Terzic can't be doing much wrong, really, when he topped the group of death. And he's doing okay, really. It's Dortmund. They're not going to win the league anyways. So I think that it's a complete stock down. I agree with you. For the last one, I'm going to have to pick a guy that, again, similar to Ream, such a nice guy, likable guy, but Matt Turner, I have to pick him. You see the reports that came out today that the Forest are looking for another keeper. that shows even more that they really don't back Turner, because they got Vladikomos, who's Greek, just like the owner. So there's always that bias that could happen there. And on the field, if Turner was having good, he had the opportunity, let's say, and props to him for giving it a go and not being content with being a bench at Arsenal. But he went from being a bench at Arsenal to being a for sure bench at Forest. And he had the opportunity. That's the saddest thing. He had the opportunity. He got a lot of games. In my opinion, he had one good game against Chelsea. He was really good at that match. And all the other ones, he had really questionable moments. Every goal, really, you can pinpoint to something that if it's a top keeper, they save it. We don't expect him to be a Howard level keeper, but at least be a bare minimum Prem level keeper, which he's not. Sadly, I have to say he's not. And his stock has definitely fallen down. I don't know if he's going to be taking on the Horvath role where he just kind of chills around and doesn't play. I don't know what will happen now, because if they're getting another keeper, and in my opinion, him and Vladikomos are basically in the same level, have been very iffy throughout the season. I don't know what to say really, but I'm really sad. It's a huge stock down, because now it's a position that people know and are aware that without any sugarcoating, that it's up for grabs. For 26 especially, up for grabs. Someone needs to step up, because Turner, I don't think he'll get any better. This is already his ceiling, so I have to pick him. Now, a lot of players we know, thankfully, we're getting a lot of American crop of players out there in Europe, and a lot of names that go under the radar. Out of these names that are maybe not mainstream ones, who has caught your eye the most and gets a stock up, Braden?
Yeah, we've definitely had the most Americans abroad and even relevant ones at MLS than we have in a very, very long time, potentially ever. And I think it's just going to keep growing. We see how many Americans we have at youth academies all across Europe, and it's just so encouraging for our future. But getting into that, my sleeper pick for stock up for the first half of the season is going to be Dwayne Holmes. I'm a huge fan of this guy. Plays the 10 for Preston North End in the championship. Started the season on absolute fire, as did his club. First in the championship after several game weeks. He was flying, scoring goals, getting assists every single game, it seems. And he was one of the main reasons why Preston North End were doing so well, looking like a surprise contender to go up. Now, they have fallen off a little bit as the season has progressed, but they're still contending for playoffs. And Dwayne Holmes has still had a very, very good season, especially by his means, considering he was a bit of a rotational player at Huddersfield, who are a lot worse of a club, especially this season. So to make that slight step up and just improve his game so immensely, he is already about 28 years old, I believe. So I don't know if he has a long-term future for the USMNT, but honestly, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to give him a look in, especially considering how some of our other 10s have folded under pressure, we'll say, in recent camps, regardless of how good they have been for their clubs in Europe. We've had some lackluster performances at the USMNT level, so why not give him a call? I would say for Camp Cupcake, but he'll be playing club level, unfortunately. We'll see. Maybe he could be an overage player for the Olympics. I don't know, but we have a lot of competitions coming up in the next couple of years. Hopefully he can get at least one look in.
Stranger things have happened, really. Stranger, like you said, Tolkien got linked to Chelsea. You never know what will happen in this world. But I'm not hating on Tolkien, by the way. But yeah, it's a fair take. I like that Holmes is playing at the. I always feel like the second division of second divisions in general, it brings up something else from the player. Really, it has to bring a real character to pull through those, and it's nice. It definitely is a step up. I would have never imagined that he'd be. I think he's a huge aspect on why they may be fighting for a playoff spot, and no one would have said that at the beginning of the season for Preston North End. So, yeah, good job for him. I'm going to pick a player that, I'll be completely honest, this is completely based on 3 to 5 games. Griffin Yo, I have to say, he has been a huge help for Westerlo, linking up with Brian Reynolds there, but they weren't doing well at all. It took almost halfway through the season for them to get a win, really. So, and he's been a big part of that. He scored a really nice goal, really techy, and I'm picking him for a stock up, especially because of his age. He is Olympic eligible. And at a position, he plays as a striker, but he's playing more as a winger. It's a position where we need depth, even on the main team. So I don't know, maybe it is. It's definitely the first time he puts his name on the map at the European stage, which seems to be the norm now for our players that will be featuring in the main national team. And that's completely fair. It is a higher level. So I have to say, getting himself out there and doing well, helping revive the club's season as well. Now they're not in the relegation zone for the first time as well, and he scores back-to-back games. Really nice to see, so I have to pick him. I think it's a player that went completely under the radar. I was really torn in between him or Dante Povaro, but I'll pick him just because of the out of nowhere aspect that it brought. So Griffin Yo is my pick. Now on the sadder note, Braden, who's the player that's not a mainstream level player, maybe within the fringes, and you think that brought his stock down?
Yeah, Griffin, yeah, seems to always pop up towards the end of the game when they need him the most. And I think Taylor Booth can take notes from him because he came back from injury as well, and he's completely capitalized on his opportunity, which Booth did not. But to close out this video, my sleeper pick is the stock down. And again, it's another injury. You're seeing the theme here, but Sam Vines and just everything has gone wrong for him this season. He very recently came back from a long-term injury just a couple of games ago. I think he's actually only played one game since coming back. He got injured very early on in the season, right after he got left off of the Champions League list for Antwerp due to a administrative error. Now, I mean, he wouldn't have ended up playing because he did get injured, unfortunately, but it's just a morale killer, honestly. Both those things happening back to back for him. And I don't think he's capitalized, honestly, in training. It took him a lot longer to get back than I think it should have. I don't know. Like I said, his morale is probably very, very low, maybe at an all-time low. And while he was out, a whole new crop of left backs seemed to have just spawned in. Honestly, we have 4 or 5 more that were not there before that are now contending for that backup spot that was so up for grabs that Vines seemed to have a foot in the race for. But now there's players like John Tolkien, Caleb Wiley, Christopher Lund, Nathaniel Brown, the dual national, and others as well. George Bellows having a resurgent season in Austria. And I think Sam Vines has fallen 5 or 6 spots down the pecking order, so it has to be a stock down for me.
Yeah, it's sad to see, really. Sad to see from a memorable moment earlier on to just, I have no words, really. I don't think it's really family friendly, the word that I have to describe how his season has gone really so far. But yeah, it's a cluster, you know. It's unbelievable, really, what happened. I'm picking a player that, honestly, maybe a lot of people could see this coming, but he gets a lot of hype because he's a dual national. The fakest dual national you can get out there, but he is. People say he is. Cade Cowell, no words, really. I mean, I don't think there's much to say. And honestly, people still put him there as maybe a player for the future. We saw the links to Bologna, which in hindsight, maybe if there was ever a rumor, he should have just gone. And maybe he's a player where I think that if he gets his stock up for his athleticism or whatever reason, he gets it up enough to get rumored to a club in Europe, just go. It's going to be the only shot you'll get. So might as well give it a chance and surprise everyone. The will to play and the urgency seems to be there. The physicality seems to be there. But maybe he should have just played football. Honestly, it doesn't really require the finesse and skills to handle a ball. So it's sad to see. I hope that I'm wrong, but I have to say, look at that. Honestly, you can watch it, make it what you will, but against Fiji, he had a nice goal, and that can only take you so far. Look at him at the MLS level, and it's very underwhelming, very, very underwhelming for the amount of hype that some people put him on. So, yeah, I have to pick Cade Cowell. Not much left to say, really. I won't even have to pinpoint a game or anything. Cade Cowell, for me, gets a stock down. Now, anything else, Braden? Any honorable mentions that you want to throw out there before we finish off the video?
Just wanted to take this moment to thank everyone who's been watching, especially recently. We've had a huge uptick in subscribers, views during the holiday season. It's been so nice. So thank you to everyone who's watching, everyone who's liked, commented, subscribed. We really do appreciate it. And this video is going out on New Year's, so happy New Year's. On to bigger and better things for everyone in 2024.
Yeah, happy New Year's, everyone. Like Braden said, thank you guys so much for being a part of the community that's growing. We'd love to see more of you guys commenting. We really appreciate that you're watching the channel. Make sure to like, subscribe, share with your friends. And 2024 will be the year that Testament takes Venezia to Serie A. So happy New Year's to everyone. We'll see you next time.